What's going on? This is Matt, the ScotianCanadien, and this is my preview for the 2018-19 Montreal Canadiens season. Before I get started, I just want to bring up that in the media and in the public eye right now, it is believed that Montreal is going to have another very bad year next year and that they're one of the worst teams in the league. I'm here to tell you that I think that is absolutely false. I think they're being undersold. They finished 28th in the league last year, and basically everything that could have went wrong for them did. Max Pacioretty, their best goal scorer, had the worst year of his career. Carey Price had one of the worst years of his career and battled injuries. Shea Weber was injured in the very first game of the season. We were also top of the league in man games lost to injury, and a lot of that was to key players or young players that were trying to develop, and it just didn't quite work out for them last season. So with all that said, I think there's a lot to be excited for next season for the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm going to tell you why. We're going to talk about the projected lines and what I think they're going to look like to start the season. So up first, I would say that whatever line Jonathan Drouin is on is going to be the Habs' first line. So I see him as lining up again in the 1C spot. He started to show improvement there last year, so I'm looking forward to what he'll bring next season. He is a player that at any moment in the next couple seasons could break out and become a legitimate elite superstar in this league. He scored 18 points in the last 25 games of the season last year playing center. That's a 60-point pace over a full season. So I think he has a lot more to give. I don't see why he cannot become a 60 to 70 point center in the near future. I think Drouin is going to be paired with Domi to start the season. I think this could be a very dynamic pair. He was acquired for Alex Galchenyuk. I was sad to see Galchenyuk go. I was a huge fan of his, but I'm a big fan of this trade and getting Max Domi. One, because his dad's a legendary Leaf, and he's now going to be a thorn in the Leafs fans' side for the next many years to come, so that's huge. I love it. And he's also a very, very good playmaker, which is something that Montreal is lacking. One of the takeaways I had from last season was that it just didn't seem we didn't have any natural playmakers. We didn't have anyone to set up our shooters. So bringing in Max Domi, he still has some untapped potential. I can see him becoming an elite playmaker in the NHL. They said he had a bad year last year. He had 36 assists. So if that's a bad year for Domi, I would love to see what a good season is. And I'm hopeful that to start the season, Gallagher will be on their right wing. Drouin and Gallagher started to play with each other a little bit towards the end of last season, and it worked out very well. So I'm hoping that's how they start this season. Then I see the line 2 as being Danault at the 2C spot with Pacioretty on his left. I'm also very high on Phillip Danault. He is very, very sound defensively. He's a great skater. He's a very hard-working player. He had some injury trouble last year. He scored 40 points in his first year with Montreal, and then last year with the injury troubles, he couldn't repeat that, but he was on pace for that. So if he didn't have the injuries, he probably would have matched that total again. So I think he also has another a gear that he can reach, and I'm hoping that Shearback gets to just immediately start out in Montreal's top 6 and play on the right side of these players. The reason why I think that is because Danault's a two-way center. He grinds for pucks, gets down deep, retrieves pucks. Pacioretty is a shooter, natural shooter. When he's at his best, he's in shooting areas, getting ready to unleash that lethal shot that he has. I think what you need to add to that line is Shearback, who is a dynamic player. For some reason, I feel like this guy is going to break out and be a legitimate top 6 forward in the NHL. He is extremely skilled, has great vision, great size, powerful stride, and an absolutely great shot. So I'm hopeful that he can be one of the breakout players for Montreal this season. That brings me to the line 3, where Thomas Plekanec will be, and on his left, I see it being Charles Hudon. Those two played together for a lot last year, so I see them pairing up again. I really like Charles Hudon. For a small guy, he's quite tough. He finished, I believe it was 6th in hits for Montreal last season. I see him bringing that element to his game again. He's basically a perfect third-line winger. He got 30 points in his rookie season last year in 73 games, so that's very impressive for a first year in the NHL. I see on their right side being Arturi Lehkonen. Arturi Lehkonen is one season removed from scoring 18 goals in his rookie season in just 73 games. So he could potentially be a 20-goal scorer for Montreal next season if he's able to repeat what he did in his rookie season. He kind of struggled last year, a bit of a sophomore slump, and had some injury issues. So it'll be interesting to see how Lehkonen plays this year. Now down to the 4th line. I have Mike Pekka listed there as the center, but the interesting thing here is that Jake Evans could also make the team and possibly line up in that spot. We'll have to wait and see. Bob McKenzie thinks Jake Evans ready for the NHL, but the way Montreal likes to develop players, I can see them waiting on Jake Evans and leaving him in Laval to get some huge minutes to start off the season, and then maybe get a call-up later on in the year. So on Pekka's left, I have Nick Delaurier. He was a bright spot for Montreal's season last year. He laid an incredible amount of hits, very, very gritty player, but he also scored a few goals too. I think he had over 10 goals. And then on the right of that line is Joel Armia. Montreal got Joel Armia from the Winnipeg Jets, along with Steve Mason's contract, which Montreal then bought out. So for taking on Steve Mason's contract, Winnipeg gave us Joel Armia. And I've talked to a few different Winnipeg fans, and they're actually quite disappointed to see Joel Armia go. He had a nickname in Winnipeg, One Man Army Armia, and that's because he showed flashes of being able to dangle through teams and finish plays all on his own. So he was a first-round draft choice in 2011. He has some untapped potential. I think he's going to have to earn his ice time in Montreal. He's going to have to do that where he is a new player. That's why I have Lehkonen listed ahead of him, but I could see Joel Armia climbing the lineup, especially if there is some injuries. That leaves us with the extras as Delaurier. He could also come in and Matt Pekka's spot. And then Byron Fries, who could also end up playing in Laval. And then we have some injuries going into next season to our forwards. Paul Byron, he had surgery to his shoulder. He could be ready for just around the start of the season. And then there's Andrew Shaw, who had knee surgery in the offseason. He's probably going to miss a month or two of the season. So those are a couple injuries to start. Now let's look at the defense. First of all, I'm going to say that there's a huge injury to the defense. We all know what that is. Shea Weber is out until about mid to late December. That's a huge blow. But luckily, we're actually not too bad on the right side of our defense. When our defense is fully healthy, our right side actually looks pretty good. So with Weber out, that means Petry's going to be our number one right defenseman, and I think he'll be paired with Victor Mete. I see Jeff Petry being the main offensive defenseman on that line to start. Victor Mete is extremely responsible defensively. Due to his size, I can't see him becoming a first pairing defenseman, but I can see him becoming a very reliable top four defenseman. He's incredibly sound defensively and very reliable already, even though he's only 20 years old. And that is because of his skating. He's a small player. He has a small frame, but he's a very, very good skater. And he uses his size and his skating to be very agile. And he uses that to box out players in the slot, dig pucks out of the corners, be the first guy to the puck. He's very, very good with his stick and breaking up passing lanes. He's a very impressive player. And I'm not saying he doesn't have any offensive upside. He was quite the offensive player in junior. It's just going to take him some time and some experience in the league to then let his offensive game flourish. Next line, I see being Noah Juulsen is a key piece. I think he's Montreal's best defensive prospect right now, and he's about to make his rookie debut and play his rookie season in the NHL. With Shea Weber out, I can see him getting some very important minutes for the team. He played some impressive games last year towards the end of the year. I'm very intrigued to see what he'll bring to our team. If we are to survive the Shea Weber injury the first bit of the season, it will be because Noah Juulsen stepped up and filled a huge role with Weber's absence. I see Noah Juulsen in the second pair on the right side, and then being paired up with Alzner. Those two played together towards the end of last season, and it looked pretty good. Alzner didn't have much of a good season, but then once he got paired with Juulsen, he started to look a lot better. That leaves us with a last pair of Mike Riley on the left and Jordy Ben on the right. Mike Riley had 9 points in 18 games with the Habs. That's half a point a game after the trade deadline when we acquired him. So that's very impressive. He's 25 years old, so the next few years of his career should be some of his best. That leaves the extras as David Schlemko, Xavier Ouellet, and Brett Lernout. And then, of course, Weber's injury. It's going to be tough with Weber being out. However, if he returns on the timeline that they say, that still leaves January, February, March, and half of April. So 3.5 months of hockey left when Shea Weber returns. So if Montreal can stay around the 500 mark and in a playoff race by the time Shea Weber returns, we could be laughing because that's a huge rejuvenation into the lineup, getting Shea Weber back, who is still a Norris quality defenseman. Even though he's been out and had some injury problems, prior to that, he's played 82 games a year, put up 15 to 20 goals a year. He's like the epitome of consistency as an offensive defenseman in the NHL. Plus, he is one of, if not the best shutdown defenseman in the league. So if you look through this roster, you can see that there are a lot of very young players on this team, and a lot of them have quite a bit of potential left. They also have numerous veterans who are well respected in the locker room that can show these young players how to become true professionals. Something else I want to mention just briefly is the possibility of our third overall pick from this draft, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, of making the NHL this year. There is still a slight chance he could earn his way onto the Montreal Canadiens this season. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen. The way Montreal develops players is they take their time, so I see them sending Jesperi Kotkaniemi back to Finland to play in his home country and get huge minutes as a first-line center for his team, and then possibly join Montreal the following season. However, it'll still be very exciting to watch Jesperi Kotkaniemi at the start of this season, because I do think Montreal is going to give him some preseason games and possibly like 5 to 9 game tryout in the regular season as well. So we're going to get a good chance to get a good look at who might be the future number 1 center of the Montreal Canadiens. Now let's look at the goaltending, where the Habs are absolutely set for now and in the future. Carey Price, obviously the starter. He had a rough year last year, but I expect him to bounce back fully. If he plays at the elite level that he can, I don't see why Montreal can't make the playoffs just for that. So Price is a starter, Niemi as the backup. He earned a contract with Montreal because of how he played once he came to us last season. He was incredible for a lot of games, stole some games for us. He earned a contract to stay, so he'll be our backup. And that leaves Charlie Lindgren as our starter in Laval. Another reason to be very excited for next season is the rejuvenation of the coaching staff. We have brought in 2 new coaches. So our coaching staff now looks like Claude Julien, obviously, as head coach, Olympic gold medal winning coach, Stanley Cup winning coach, very respected coach in the league. Next up, Kirk Muller, Habs legend. He's the associate coach. And then we have our 2 new coaches, Dominic Ducharme, former coach of the Halifax Mooseheads, who won a Memorial Cup with none other than Jonathan Drouin. So that is huge to reunite Jonathan Drouin and Dominic Ducharme. Dominic Ducharme also coached Team Canada in the World Juniors. And then last year with Victor Mete, they won the gold, beating Sweden. So that's huge to bring him in. I think he's a great coach. He's going to coach the offense. He coaches a very fast-paced game, and he tries to get the most skill out of his players as possible. And then we brought in Luke Richardson to coach the defense. He comes from the New York Islanders system, so hopefully that we see some improvement, especially in the penalty kill and with the defense. And then we also hired a new coach for Laval, Joel Bouchard. He comes from the Armada of the QMJHL. Next up, I'll quickly touch on the cap management. That's one of Bergevin's main strengths, is his ability to manage the cap. So Montreal, heading into next season, will have $7.8 million in cap space left. That's basically a top 4 defenseman or a top 6 forward. We have the money available to that if one becomes available, free agency in the future or by trade sometime throughout the season. So you don't just spend cap just to do it. It's good to have that asset available to you if need be. It also means that in the future, when some of our young guys might need new contracts, that money will likely be available to them, and we won't have to risk losing one of our young players. So that's it. Our first game of the season will be against the Toronto Maple Leafs and John Tavares. There is nothing I would like more than to shove that John Tavares hype down Leafs fans' throats and beat them in the first game of the season. I could see it happening. So that's just about it for my 2018-19 Montreal Canadiens season preview. I think the Montreal Canadiens are going to make the playoffs next year. Do you? Please let me know in the comments. And if you like my videos, please subscribe, and you can also find me on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Matt, the ScotianCanadien. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll talk to you soon. Go Habs, go.